Aloha, everyone. Welcome to this edition of HIAMFT's Facebook Live. Of course, you know I'm John Souza, the president, and we've got Danny Gardner here, East Hawaii chapter rep and all things extraordinary when it comes to administrative responsibilities for the organization. Mahalo and aloha, Danny.
Aloha.
Aloha. And we are joined by a special guest, Shelley Huntington, of the very, what I hear is cold, Washington area. And Shelley, it is wonderful to meet you and to host with you today. Welcome.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Danny. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so Danny, this really is your connection. You and Shelley know each other somehow.
Yeah, we're both students at NCU currently. And we met at the LBGTQIA++ group. And we just, it's a group for us to share our thoughts, feelings, experiences. So it's been really wonderful because the stories that Shelley has shared with me didn't just capture me, it inspired me so greatly. Shelley is incredible. I mean, it truly is my superwoman. I mean, I look at her that way because of all the stuff that she's overcome. Her experiences are vast. She's a Navy veteran. It's like, wow, that alone is just incredible. She's an LMFT. She's going for her doctorate's degree, and she is a mother. She's an advocate. So she is somebody that I just want people to get to know and emulate because she's incredible. So I'll stop there. So anything else Shelley wants? She's amazing. So I've just been really privileged to know her at that capacity.
That's incredible. Well, Shelley.
I think I'm embarrassed.
I would be too. That sounds wonderful, though. I mean, wow, that's a lot. Any one of those things pique your interest in terms of sharing with us?
Yeah, I was thinking about what happened in my life to have me go back to school to get my marriage and family therapist license and degree. I am a Navy veteran, like Danny said. I did a lot of my tour in Washington, D.C. So I am a retired hospital corpsman master chief. And I ended up retiring from the Navy in 2012. And when military people retire, they're kind of lost. It's this identity because it becomes all encompassing for us. And it's part of the things that I actually read about and research. And so when I retired, I didn't know, what am I going to do? I kind of went through a depression myself, trying to figure that out. And it was my wife who actually pointed me into being a therapist, because that's kind of what you do as a master chief. You do a lot of counseling, you help sailors kind of put your foot in their butt a little bit and move them along. And so I went to school and I got my degree in psychology and became a marriage and family therapist. And I know many of you know how difficult it is to get your license in marriage and family. It's not an easy test to take. And then you don't really, or at least for Shelley, you don't really start learning about being a therapist until you do it. So you start off in, lots of us start off in community mental health. And that's when you sit down and you go, oh my gosh, where's that book? Where's the book? I better read about CBT more so that I can actually help this person sitting in front of me. And so that's when your learning truly begins. And I love being a marriage and family therapist. I am fortunate that I am retired. And so I only work 2 days a week, but they're pretty full, right? If I see about 8 clients a day. And I would say 80% of my practice is veterans. And then the other 20% are LGBT. So it's quite an interesting mesh of people who are sitting in the waiting room. And I love this job. And I can't imagine not being a mental health therapist. And now that I'm on my journey for my doctorate degree, it's in psychology of gender diversity. And so I have read quite a bit of research on teen transgender kids. And being in Port Angeles, Washington, and I know some of you might have to look that up on the map, but it is on the furthest northernest part of Washington state. Pretty conservative here. And so there's not a whole lot of therapists in our area who actually work with the transgender population. And when I was in community mental health, it got brought up, and I said, well, I'll do that. And so how do you become a specialist to work with the transgender population? Well, Shelley said, well, let's go to Seattle, because Seattle's about 2 to 3 hours away from here. And me and a couple of therapists used to drive in the evenings on Thursdays to go to Seattle to be trained on how do you become an affirming therapist to work with transgender folks. And that's how we kind of got involved in working with young people and older people. So one of the things that I learned in my studies as a PhD student was how, first of all, I need to say, in the state of Washington, when a person is 13 years old, they have the right to their own consent. And so I can have a young person here who, without their parent, seeking treatment for therapy. And however, in the state of Washington, in order to do any transitioning, you need a parent's consent. So there's kind of this mixed dynamic that happens when you have young people who are trying to direct their healthcare, which is not a terrible thing. But one of the things I learned in my studies was how the family needs to be involved. Mm-hmm. And as a marriage and family therapist, that makes sense to me. I might have a young person in here who has watched every YouTube video on what it's like to transition, but to have the reality of it happening, your family needs to be involved. One of the statistics that's very sad is the rejection of family and what happens to young people and their mental health thoughts and becoming suicidal, depressed, anxious, those kinds of things. So first session involves one of the parents. I used to not do that because in my brain, this 13-year-old had the right to their own consent. But I will let you know that might be true, but they're still 13 years old. And so we make that first session pretty much an educational session about what is involved, what are we going to talk about, how are we going to do their gender odyssey, how are we going to do their gender quest. And then we go from there. Every once in a while, a parent will come back and we'll talk again about any concerns for that parent and the young person. We even might watch something that I have found that's educational on the internet. But it's definitely open. And that's really important from all of the research that I have read regarding young people and their non-binary status of some sort. So now we go back to that other 80% of my practice, which is veterans. And working with the veteran population, it's a culture. And what I have found is that although we have great therapists in our area, one of the first things that happened when I was I need to go back up a second. One of the first things I found when I went to community mental health is, what did therapists think about people who were in the military? And that was kind of amazing to me, that their thoughts were absolutely not on target of why people join the military. Many people join the military for many different reasons. Uh, some of it has to do with income, some of it has to do with insurance, stability in a job. It could be multiple different reasons of why. Getting money to go to college. It could be lots of different reasons why a person joins the military. And so for me, I have a disabled child. And so me and my family were kind of stuck in this. This was before the Affordable Care Act. We were stuck in this area where if I made too much money, then we lost our daughter's insurance benefits. If I stayed poor, then we had insurance benefits. And so me and my spouse at the time made the decision to go on active duty because it was income and insurance for us. Now, granted, I was pretty successful on active duty, but it got us out of that rut. And I was able to go to school, and I got my, this will be funny because my bachelor's degree is in computer information systems because I wanted to be a computer programmer. But then, of course, I woke up and thought, I'm not going to sit at a computer all day because that's not what I wanted to do. And then, of course, COVID hit, and I sat at a computer all day working with clients. But back to military folks and why do they join the military? Many of the therapists had kind of strange ideas on why people join the military, mainly negative. And so, of course, I got to do a lot of teaching on veterans at the community mental health place. And what I find when I have a veteran sitting with me is that there's a dynamic that when they tell me that their first lieutenant did blah, 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 whatever it is that they did, I already know what's happened in that dynamic. I know that, you know, a first lieutenant is very young, probably right out of college, doesn't know a heck of a lot, and they're trying to lead people without listening, usually to their senior enlisted person. So I already know that angst, that trouble that they might be feeling with this officer that may or may not be listening. It's hard to know. So we'll have a talk about it, and we'll talk about how they felt, the anxiety they might have felt during that time. Was that a part of whatever happened? When did they serve during war? Did they not serve during war? Some of it matters, some of it doesn't matter. You can have trauma and not serve during war just as much as you can have trauma in war. So many people sometimes, unfortunately, maybe they're young therapists, believe that trauma only happens if you're in theater, and that's not true. So we do a lot of discussion about what has happened in their career, what has them, what have my English, where are they stuck? So I've also became an EMDR therapist so that I can help my veterans and other people with the trauma that they are experiencing in their life. So my number one thing is that the education starts right when you get out of school. It doesn't, I mean, yes, you get like a little introduction while you're in school, but when you actually start seeing clients is when your education truly starts. And there's so much more to learn after school to become an effective therapist. The other thing that's I have found is, in school, they don't teach us anything about how to run a business. And so many therapists that I talk to, I'm helping them figure out, how do you run a business? And one of the most important things to get connected with is a consultation group, so that you are a part of meeting other therapists and being able to discuss cases that you may need help with, or discuss uh, interventions, ideas, or they need to talk about interventions and ideas. This is after you have no supervisor anymore. Uh, as an associate, you would have a supervisor that you could talk to regarding some struggles that you might have. But running a business means you have to like earn money to pay the rent. So uh, the business part becomes interesting. How much am I willing to spend? What I mean by that is, there are electronic health records out there. There are billers that will bill for you. There are all these different things that just want to take all your money. It's like, I can't make it because everybody's trying to take it. So, and so starting your business can be rough, and um, and it could be slow. At this point in time with COVID, it's not slow. We need more therapists than we have. And so the more therapists that can start their own business or get to work, we need you. We need you bad. So please stick to it, and know that I know the person that's probably sitting in front of you will appreciate your work that you're doing with them. So some of the other things that I find interesting, being a marriage and family therapist, is understanding. We talked about a little bit with veterans culture, because um, I am white, therefore I do have some privilege, uh, even though I'm a female and a lesbian, which kind of puts me into another category. But it's important to realize, when you have a person in front of you, to actually ask questions that you don't know, um, because assumption, I know we've heard of that before, really will get you in trouble. So staying focused on what is this person's goals, not yours, their goals. What are their goals that are sitting in front of you? One of my biggest downfalls, I would say, as a therapist, is I always want to move too fast, and I need to slow down and not be in a rush to fix, because I'm not supposed to be the fixer. The client is the one who's supposed to work on themselves. And if I'm working harder than the client, which usually happens, I admit it, then I need to take a step back and figure out why. Why am I working harder than the person in front of me? Because they came to see me because they want to get better. At least that's the assumption, right? And
So
so,
how do you recognize that?
how do you recognize
Yeah,
that?
I
Well,
would think it'd be difficult from my perspective because I don't have that experience yet.
it's hard, right? Because we want to help, and um, and the hardest piece is to realize that if I've given an intervention and they don't do it, then that means it was most likely too hard and they weren't ready for that. So then I have to take that intervention and break it down into smaller steps. So an example would be, I have a person who's depressed and they never want to leave their home. So one of the things that I might first talk about is um, movement. Is this person moving? Because a lot of times they're not, right? They're sitting, on their couch or they're sitting at their chair, and movement becomes very slow. So the first piece would be going to the door, opening a window, letting in fresh air. So we have to start with smaller steps to do that. And you'll still get pushback. You'll still sometimes get pushback from that. The next piece would be if I'm still getting that, then I'm asking, do you have a nurse practitioner or a psychiatrist? Because although my first thing isn't to reach out for medication, because we can do things to heal ourselves without medication, sometimes we need that boost. And so I might give them a referral to the psychiatrist in the area or the nurse practitioner right down the road to help them potentially get that boost up with some kind of medication. So the first thing is to realize if they're not doing their homework, we have to figure out why. Why are you not doing your homework? That means I'm working harder, right? If I'm trying to come up with another intervention because they didn't do that intervention and then they didn't do the next one and I'm coming up with another one, well, guess what? I'm working pretty hard because we're supposed to be working on their goals. What is my goal? My goal is to leave my home at least once a week. Shelley's goal is she wants them to leave their home every day, not just once a week. Get out in the sun, because the sun is really probably our number one antidepressant out there, is getting outside, breathing fresh air, hearing the birds sing, the sun. However, when you have a person who is really depressed, it's really difficult to want to do that. Now, sometimes if we get, if the person has a partner or somebody that they live with, we might ask them, do you do things with your family member? And most of the time they may not. And then might ask, why? Why are you not doing things with your family member? And there may be reasons. I mean, you never know what reason potentially will be. But the key is to start those little steps. Start those little steps to getting out the door. The other thing is, let's say, anxiety. I have anxiety going out the door. Because depression and anxiety kind of come together. So I might look at, you might go through CBT, you might go through solution focus, you might even do some tapping in to try and reduce that anxiety. Having tools, when you're talking to your client, you're trying to help them have tools for the rest of their life. I'm giving you tools for your tool bag so that you have it forever and that you will always be able to pull from these tools to use, and that you won't always have to come to a therapist to try and reduce your anxiety. You will have tools available to you all the time. One of the other tools that works really well is mindfulness. Mindfulness is being in the present moment, because a lot of times, one of the things one of my instructors told me was that if you're thinking about the past and you're cycling the past in your head, it's probably depression. If you're worried about the future, if you're always worried about this next step, this next thing that's going to happen, it's most likely anxiety. So a lot of times the client they don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know. Okay, then let's talk about what it is you're thinking about. What is it you're thinking about? Teenagers will say, I don't know for everything.
Right. Absolutely right. And oh gosh, we could just sit here and listen forever. I wish we had more
All right.
time here. We're gonna have to invite you back sometime, Shelley, if you'd be willing to come back and share more with us in the future.
Sure. I'm a sailor, so I have sea stories all day long. I can
Yeah.
talk. Uh, I could even tell you some sea stories next time.
Oh my gosh, we'd love that. Wow. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to soak in some of your wisdom, Shelley. Thank you so much. And Danny, thanks for making this connection.
You're
All right,
welcome.
guys. Right on.
So everyone, thanks for watching today. We'll be sure to have Shelley back at some point in the future. And until next week, have a great week and be safe and happy Juneteenth, everyone.
Right
All
on.
right. Aloha.
Aloha.